National Institute of Mental Health.
Just this morning, along with his longtime psychiatrist.
Circle of depression is growing wider, broader.
15% of women suffer from this disorder.
Affecting over 20 million Americans. Changes that have occurred in the brain.
Abnormalities in the neurotransmitters.
She's got a problem. They've got a drug.
6 million American kids take prescribed medication.
Psychiatric care.
But what if the criminal is mentally ill? The punishment, a form of aversion therapy.
Shannon appears on the show, but I want to...
Seasonal affective disorder. Oppositional defiance disorder.
Schools criticized for
Everywhere you look, there it is. Think psychiatry has nothing to do with you? Think again. The whole field of psychiatry has gotten into every facet of your life.
They basically believe that everyone is mentally ill.
You smoke too much, it's a disease. You're too unhappy, it's a disease. You're too thin, it's a disease. You're too fat, it's a disease.
Where are these coming from? These are coming from the minds of psychiatrists that are dreaming these things up, writing papers and getting published with their names on it, creating these new diseases.
First he said that I had ADD. Then he said that I was depressed. Then he said I might be bipolar, but I don't have ADD anymore.
And he said, you know, I've been noticing you, and I wonder if you have it too.
What they decided is that both my husband and my son had a chemical imbalance that needed to be corrected with a chemical balancer.
There is not one shred of credible evidence that any respectable scientist would consider valid, demonstrating that anything that psychiatrists call mental illness are brain diseases or biochemical imbalances. It's all fraud.
There's no reliability of diagnosis, and there is no science. It's just pseudoscience. It's pretend science.
This is one of the most open secrets in all of America in the psychiatric field, that nothing is being done that's legitimate, and they're billing for it.
Psychiatrists claim that over 1 billion of the world's population is mentally ill. In the past 30 years, they have prescribed psychiatric medications to 543 million people. And right now, they drug 17 million school children with stimulants and antidepressants.
It is really tragic. It's awful, and it's being done for money. That's why it's being done.
Oh, it's got to be in the billions. I don't know the exact number, but it's got to be in the billions. It's just unbelievable.
This is so big that it boggles the mind.
Take the human tragedy you have just seen and multiply it by the millions. In the past 4 decades, nearly twice as many Americans have died in government psychiatric hospitals than in all U.S. wars since 1776. And while raking in over $2 trillion annually, psychiatrists cannot point to a single cure.
Sounds like a scam. It's illegal to push drugs on the street. You go to jail. But apparently this is acceptable. And it's killing just as many people. It's crazy. And did you notice the subtitles are up there? Who were these people? From their own camp. I'm not making this up, folks. Do the research for yourself. Let's take a look at another one. Abraham Maslow. You should be familiar with him in school. Said his life's work was motivated by his absolute hatred of his mother. And I'm going to listen to you for family advice? Excuse me? He also said that all people who are religious, you and I, are either hypocrites or feeble-minded. And that science to him was a god, and that human sexuality is just like primate sexuality. Just treat us like a bunch of apes. Therefore, not surprising, he developed his famous unbiblical hierarchy of needs. How many of you guys remember that in school? At Maslow, right? All right? Exactly opposite of what the Bible says for a fulfilling life. He taught that in order for people to be fulfilled, self comes first. That's the number one law of Satanism. Been there, done that. Do what you will shall be the whole of the law. That's the number one law of Satanism. That's what caused the fall of Satan. Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28. I will be like God. I will ascend to the mount of the assembly. I will be worshipped. I, self. So that's his pinnacle. Self comes first. And one needs to esteem themselves first above all and meet all your self needs before you can supposedly love other people and have a fulfilling life. Excuse me? The Bible says the greatest fulfilled life is one who loves God first, your neighbor second, and esteem others better than yourself, and deny yourself, pick up your cross, follow Christ, and suffer if need be. Exactly opposite. Karen Horney, she suffered severe bouts of depression throughout her life. She attempted suicide at one point. She was decided she wasn't happy with her marriage, so she began a life of constant sexual affairs, which her husband didn't even object to, by the way. Oh, and let's go to you for marriage advice. She also had a serious sexual addiction for young men, which included her own students and fellow colleagues, and even had sexual relations with other women as well. Then towards the end of her life, she became interested in Zen Buddhism, trying to see the connection between psychoanalysis and meditation. These are the pillars of secular psychology. Excuse me, let's get the other big guy real quick. Carl Jung, he made a wooden man out of a ruler that he called mannequin. And he kept it in a wooden case and frequently talked to it in times of trouble. Check it out yourself, folks. I'm not making this up. And I'm going to listen to this guy for advice? You've got to be kidding me. He even had, and this is his own writings, he had a mystical experience while he sat on a rock one day where he couldn't tell if he was the rock or the rock was him. Whoa! Then later he had what he considered his own writings a major breakthrough in life. He figured this was a major breakthrough in his life. Listen, when he supposedly had this vision of God going to the bathroom from the sky and it landed and smashed through a church sanctuary thing. That's a major breakthrough for him. What? But most people don't realize he was extremely, even more so than Freud, was absorbed in the occult, studied their teachings, attended seances, listened to mediums, and practiced necromancy. Okay? And he had daily contact with these embodied spirits, okay, that he called archetypes. The Bible calls them demons. And much of what he wrote was inspired by these demons. One of them he called Philemon. Okay, listen to what he wrote about this entity that would show up and give him ideas. Quote, he said, Philemons and other figures in my fantasies brought home to me the crucial insight that there are things in the psyche which I do not produce, but which produce themselves and have their own life. Philemon represented a force which was not myself. In my fantasies, I held conversations with him, and he said things which I had not consciously thought. Where's it coming from? This entity. For I observed clearly that it was he who spoke, not I. Philemon was a mysterious figure to me. I went walking up and down the garden with him, and to me he was what the Indians, Hindu gurus, called a guru. That's what the Bible calls a demon, a familiar spirit. And that's just one of them. He also had another one that he listened to, a so-called spirit guide. It's a demon, and he called it Basilides, however you pronounce that. And this is what he admits inspired him, this spirit inspired him to his so-called famous work, The 7 Sermons to the Dead. Came from this demon, right? He even stated that the work was very much identical to possession. His words, not mine. Listen to how this book came about. This is a direct quote from him. Then it was if my house began to be haunted. His words, not mine. My eldest daughter saw a white figure passing through the room. My second daughter, independent of her sister, relayed that twice in the night her blanket had been snatched away. And then that same night, my 9-year-old son had an anxiety dream. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, the front doorbell began ringing frantically. It was a bright summer day. The 2 maids were in the kitchen, from which the open square outside the front door could be seen. Everyone immediately looked to see who was there, but there was no one in sight. I was sitting near the doorbell and not only heard it, but saw it moving. We all simply stared at one another. So a demon had showed up. And he said, over the next 3 evenings, the book was written, and as soon as he began to write, and I quote, the whole ghostly assemblage evaporated, the room quieted, and the atmosphere cleared, quote, the haunting was over. And that's what inspired him to write that one work. Philemon and Basilides, that's just 2 of the spirit guides. Another one, there's a whole list, other ones he did. Another one he called Salome. Folks, these are all demons. And this is where he got his ideas. In fact, I didn't say that. He did. Listen, he admitted, quote, these conversations with the dead formed a kind of prelude to what I had to communicate to the world about the unconscious. Direct quote, how much? All my works, all my creative activity has come from those initial fantasies. This is from demons, okay? And that's why experts are saying Jung's psychology makes him, in essence, the father of New Age, giving it a theoretical framework